burning, all
All
space
space
is
is
filled
filled
with the
with the
fragrance.
fragrance.
All
All
Buddha
Buddha
smell it
smell it
from
from
afar.
afar.
Auspicious
Auspicious
clouds gather
gather
everywhere.
everywhere.
With utmost
Utmost
sincerity,
sincerity,
all
all
Buddhas
Buddhas
appear.
appear.
We pay homage and offer
Offer
clouds
clouds
of
of
incense to
to
the
the
bodhisattvas
Bodhisattvas
and
and
the
the
mahasattvas.
Mahasattvas.
We
We
pay
pay
homage
homage
and
and
offer
offer
clouds of
clouds of
incense
incense
to
to
the
the
bodhisattvas
Bodhisattvas
and
and
the
the
mahasattvas.
Mahasattvas.
We
We
pay
pay
homage,
homage,
we
we
offer
offer
clouds
clouds
of
of
incense
incense
to
to
the
the Bodhisattvas
bodhisattvas and
and
the
the
mahasattvas.
Mahasattvas. So, as you know, we're preparing to move into meditation practices. And for the last week, the last lesson and the next two sessions, it's going to be making that transition from so much language prajna into actual practice. Says the ancients had the following saying: of all the many words explaining the sutras, most are hindered by language. One will encounter the hindrances of language, and having heard a lot, when one is doing one's Dharma practice, one will think, oh, this is what it means. So we have this idea that Dharma is this written teaching, but these are just theories about Dharma. It's not the actual Dharma. The Dharma are the actual practices that we do, um, that have a preliminary stage, they have a main practice, and then they have a concluding practice that actually cause a transformation, a transcendence in mind, and a transformation in body. That's the real thing. And that's what we are after. Otherwise, we can just join in with any one of the other 84,000 Dharma methods that take eons for one to awaken. So he says, what I have is, it, I maybe hack is an irreverent word, but it is a modern word, and it's shortcut. Sometimes we say there are no shortcuts, but that's not really true. Sometimes there are shortcuts, and the shortcut is just really the direct path and cutting out all the fluff and all the stray, you know. So don't think of it as trying to find a shortcut. It is to try to demystify and deconstruct and close off all the tributaries that have kept us going in all these different ways, trying to see what is right there in front of us. Says the sixth patriarch spoke about that state of not thinking of good and not thinking of evil. The sixth patriarch always followed: do not ponder, do not conceptualize, do not seek and investigate, relying and depending on nothing, act naturally. And that was the method through which the sixth patriarch achieved his cultivated powers. Do not ponder. Do not habitually ponder things. Pondering is tracing the root of something. Conceptualizing is bringing up ideas in your current mind consciousness. Do not ponder, do not conceptualize, and do not seek and investigate. And you will learn Buddha Dhamma. All of you disciples here, I tell you that most of you here like to seek and investigate, looking for your original nature, looking for the flavor of emptiness. And this is called simply seeking and investigating. If you seek and investigate, however, you will not find what you're searching for. That deluded thinking will block you. How could you make use of that? But after you have put aside seeking and investigating, what you're searching for will appear because it's not lost, it's not very far from any one of us. But the mind that is constantly seeking and investigating keeps us from entering into what is actually right there for us. The deluded thinking will block us. After you've put aside seeking and investigating, what you're searching for will appear. If you look for emptiness, it's like carrying a baby on your back and then looking for that baby. You will never find it. That's why the saying goes, do not ponder, do not conceptualize, do not seek and investigate. Relying and depending on nothing, act naturally. The mind consciousness does not rely or depend on anything at any place. Just be completely natural. Do not care about the fact that there is cultivated power or that there is a Buddha or that there is a Dharma. Do not care about any of those things. However, you must note that you cannot intentionally seek the truth or in delusion. Don't be attached to truth or delusion. Accord with just as it is, with non-abiding. Therefore, one does learn, one does use language prajna to learn things, but these are simply called theories. It says, and then after one has learned the theories, then one leaves them at the shore, drops off, and then one just acts naturally. Act being the operative word. It means according with just as it is, with non-abiding. Therefore, one should leave behind what one has derived from hearing, thinking, practicing, and learning. Even what one has derived from thinking and hearing should be abandoned. Now, all sorts of intelligence include all scattered intelligence. After all of that is completely left behind. The remaining wisdom of prajna and true emptiness seem to remain, yet not remain. In being in such a state as that, you will awaken to true emptiness. At that time, you will naturally and thoroughly awaken, and you instantly will know that because there is nothing to attain and no differentiation. There is neither practice nor non-practice. At that time, there is nothing whatsoever that can be attained. In other words, we cannot attain our own original appearance. There is nothing attained. Once the mind consciousness is put aside, then, of course, it has no attainment. It has nothing to be attained because there's no differentiation. One's thoughts naturally do not differentiate. And realizing there's neither practice nor non-practice, then one deeply practices prajna. One need not intentionally make cultivation overly elaborate. However, one is still actually cultivating oneself. That neither practice nor non-practice, that is what is called the true practice. Only that is true practice, true continual practice. That is called practicing deeply, prajna, paramita. If there is deepness, there is also shallowness. Deepness and shallowness are spoken of in relative terms. And I'll talk about deep versus shallow. Going to the bottom of the ocean could be a metaphor, entering into the bottom characteristics of phenomena. And you can't just dive and go down deep in the ocean. There's only a certain level of depth you can have. To go any further, it takes a certain kind of apparatus. Uh, you can't go in your ordinary power. You can't go in the power of your mind to some of the realms that are available to you. You cannot take the body in there. You cannot take the ordinary mind in there. Uh, Scattered wisdom will not unlock the door. And so all of the training that we do and all of the language prajna that we do is only to build up the confidence um, to know that there is something else, that it can be known, there is another aspect to life that you can awaken to. Uh, but when you get there, it's like being at that diving board. When you're looking up, you're looking at the water, at the pool, like it's great. You know, it's 8 feet or it's 10 feet deep. The diving board doesn't look that high, and you say you're going to jump off the diving board into the pool. But when you get up there and you look down, that water looks way far away. And you start thinking like, why did I get up here? Why did I get up here? But now you're up there, right? Folks looking at you, people waiting to jump in behind you, but it's like a fear grips you, or me, when I'm up there that I didn't have when I was down here looking like that's what 8 feet. It's not a big deal, it's less than a story to the water. But when you get up there, then suddenly it's like whoa, you know. And it looks like it's too much. And we start trying to lean back on ourselves, lean back on what we know, lean back on our experience, our ordinary experience, our muddled consciousness. And we think, well, it's like when you're thinking about whether you want to vote in a new president, and one is saying like this one's not so good, but it's a known quantity. Maybe I need to stick with the known quantity than to go for the unknown, and that's our natural inclination, our natural tendency is to fall back on what we have known, fall back on what we have learned, fall back on what we have done. But if we keep falling back, we will never advance. And so I want to stop right now and ask Dr. Jim Norris if he will share a little bit about his entrance into and training at one point of time in his life. He's somewhere else completely now, but I think part of what led to where he is now was through his not just investigation, but acceptance of and utilizing certain concepts that are valuable to being able to jump off that diving board. And so I'd asked him if he will share a little bit about Ho'oponopono today and his journey with that. And Jim, please.
I was feeling pretty relaxed until you started talking about the high dive. Like a long way. Well, my wife Judith and I spent a lot of time in Hawaii between 1999 and 2012, and we became acquainted with an ancient philosophy and methodology called Ho'oponopono. I see some people shaking their heads. How many have heard of that? It's the word means basically to make right, or to recreate balance and harmony where there may have been disorder. And as it was originally practiced in old Hawaii, and to some degree to the present day, you could think of it as a conflict resolution method where the kahuna, or the tribal elder, would gather people together that were in some kind of conflict, either families or clans or whatever. And there would be a mediation process that was done. And it was done with the assumed presence and the invocation of the divine, however that might have been represented in a given community. And once the conflict was resolved, it was considered done, period. Pow, forever. And it was not even okay to bring it back up again. Because if you were done, you were done. Somewhere, I believe it was in the late 70s, there was another kahuna healer, Morna Namalaku Simeona was her name, who was inspired to take this kind of an external conflict resolution approach and see what the esoteric aspect might be, the internal aspect, basically working with self rather than working directly with external circumstances. And over a period of time, she came up with a method and a theological structure to understand it and to facilitate practicing it. And I'm not going to go into that today. You can read about that in other places. But fundamentally, it consisted of a mental action, which was usually a single word or a phrase or an image that when thought, you understood to go down into the unconscious or subconscious mind, where it became a petition to the divine. And another division of mind called superconscious mind would refine that prayer or that petition so that it was in accord with the best and highest of all concerned. Okay. And then there would be a downflow of mana or sacred energy from the divine into all these other different levels of mind that would clear the blockage. So it's primarily a method for clearing up blockages in oneself that are creating or helping to sustain the problems that one sees in one's world. An example of one of these thoughts, they're called cleaning tools, by the way, would be the word aloha, which the word aloha is a contraction. It consists of two words, alo, which means in the presence of, and ha, which means the divine breath, the breath of life. So in the presence of the divine, somebody says aloha to you, it's really a profound gift. So aloha is an example of a cleaning tool. Thank you is another one. You know, Meister Eckhart said if the only prayer that we ever said was thank you, it would be enough. So an example, I think probably the most famous example of the use of this approach was a fellow who became the primary teacher of Ho'oponopono, Ihaleakala Hugh Lin was his name. And he was a psychologist in the Hawaii State Hospital in Kaneohe. I'm sure you remember where Kaneohe is on the island of Oahu. And he went to work on the unit for the criminally insane, the forensic unit. Now that's a place that most psychologists don't want to get assigned to. And prior to his being assigned there, the unit was in pretty bad shape. Nobody wanted to come into the unit to do repairs because attacks on staff were frequent. Nobody really wanted to work there. Patients were in 4-point restraints, many of them. It was a horrible place. Medication wasn't even working that well. So he agreed to come on as long as he could practice what he did. And what he did was he went into his office and all day long, he would read through the charts of these patients and note what came up in him as he read about these pretty awful scenarios that these men had been convicted of. And he would do this Ho'oponopono process on himself with regard to these feelings and images, thoughts and emotions that would come up. He never had any one-on-one therapy with any patient, never conducted any group therapy, never went to any staff meetings. But he didn't do anything that a normal psychologist did. But he began this Ho'oponopono process before he arrived at the hospital, while he was there reading the charts, and then as he was going home. So he spent more than the better part of a day in this work. And the results are legendary by now. They were able to open the unit. They were able to discontinue the use of restraints, lower medications. They developed work activities for the patients. There were simply no incidents of the kind that were described after a period of time. The overall emotional quality of the unit was one of peace and well-being and collegiality. And I mean, there were a few incidents here and there, like you would have on any inpatient unit in psychiatry, but nothing even remotely to the degree that had been previously. And well, this has all been documented. In fact, I closed the unit because the patients, all but 2 of the patients were discharged, and those 2 were sent to another facility. Simply by diligently doing this very simple process. The idea of Ho'oponopono is that we're hardwired for it. That this is something that we actually have the circuitry for, being introduced in how to do it, you know, how to use the cleaning tool. Then you simply start it and the whole process takes care of itself automatically from there on. Totally natural. I think that's a good place to stop.
For a time at Hartwood, we did a little bit of this practice. If I had thought about it, or actually, if I'd known that Jim was going to be here today, I would have put up the chanting that we did around Ho'oponopono. It was so beautiful. Maya remembers. I'll actually see if I can find it. I think it should be included. And we're working on a chant album, and the whole purpose of this album is to allow us to be able to ascend in the heavenly realms. And so this is moving beyond our ordinary consciousness, and there are techniques, methods by which we can do this. Now, methods might have different purposes, you know, and Ho'oponopono has a purpose and an effect in the phenomenal world, and it was very useful for that. Like you said, they ended up closing the mental hospital for the criminally insane. And he never touched a patient, never sat with, never did. He did all the work. And that's an example, a verifiable example of the power and the capacity of the mind that goes beyond our ordinary understanding of how the mind works, what is possible in the realm of causality, of cause and effect, and what effect if we implement certain things, and the washing of the mind, the states that we can enter into as a bodhisattva. And why the bodhisattva vow? The vow has to be there, right? The precepts that sustain the vow, that the principles that accord with the universe, but how it takes a revolution in the mind to be able to enter into this. So we can't go with all of our usual hardware. We want to take everything on our backpack, but we have to leave it at the door. So I wanted to talk a little bit about consciousness today, and we started Thursday. What day is this? Thursday. Okay, so we started Tuesday, and I didn't talk about what some call the ninth consciousness because that actually goes outside of the realm of our ordinary consciousnesses. The sixth that we know about, the seventh, the Manas consciousness, and the eighth, the Alaya consciousness. And we'll talk about the rest from the side of Prajna. That ninth actually belongs to our Dhammakaya body. Consciousness is understanding and differentiating all dharmas, including what has form, what's devoid of form, avidya, awareness, karma-induced delusion of form that has deeply accumulated in the consciousness, like dust and sand. It understands and differentiates all objects that are produced by causal conditions, and it has the function of understanding and differentiating all conditioned sense objects with which one comes into contact. So that means like eyes see something, ears hear something, tongue tastes something, nose smells something, body feels something. And and then the sixth is the mind, when it's connected, comes up with what this is. So besides the sixth consciousness, there is also the seventh, or the Manas consciousness, and the eighth, or the Alaya consciousness. Among these eight consciousnesses, only the eighth, or the Alaya consciousness, is the general entity of all the consciousnesses. It's also called the eighth consciousness, mind king. Mind consciousness is very important. All other aggregates receive directions from the aggregate of consciousness. Consciousness is understanding and differentiating all dharmas, including what has form, what is devoid of form, awareness, avidya, and karma-induced delusions that have deeply accumulated in the consciousness, like innumerable dust and sand. Consciousness has the function of understanding and differentiating all objects produced by causal conditions. That means differentiating good or bad, long and short, red or yellow, etc. What consciousness can imagine includes that which has form and that which has no form. It gives rise to the mentality of differentiation, including differentiation based on avidya and differentiation based on awareness. And we know what avidya is, right? Yeah, okay. Differentiations may be retrieved and reproduced from what one experienced a certain number of eons ago, such as strange and peculiar incidents. For example, there are some dream states emanating from karma-induced delusion that have deeply accumulated in the consciousness. Even phenomena that one has never seen in this lifetime might appear in dreams. These are illusions emanating from karma-induced delusion that has deeply accumulated like innumerable dust and sand. Consciousness understands and differentiates all objects that are produced by causal conditions. I think I shared yesterday about Tuesday about a dream that I had recently. Was that? Did I share that openly?
Maybe a music.
Oh, that was in choir. And I want to show you how quickly something comes and clarifies what something is for you in a way that it can be something and it can be nothing. So I had this dream, and in this dream, I was in some kind of world. It wasn't this world. It was like not this world on steroids, but if you could take whatever we consider reasonably good qualities of this world and the pride of life, like uh, learning good skills, having a good career, being successful in business, having a loved one, having a wonderful family, living uh, in grand accommodations, anything you could think of that was like some boon in this life. If it was shifted into a different kind of quality that was the ultimate, that made this just look like seem like imitation, you know, that's that's the world that I was in this dream. And it's such a different that this looks like it looks two-dimensional and fake, and like we missed the point, you know, from that place of experience during this dream. And and so then I came back and I was just thinking like, what a lovely place. Now I understand why I understood something about the formless, uh, the realm of forms, the realm of forms. So the three, you have the desire realms, and the first one, and we talked about what's the driving impetus for us in this world, um, and it's actually like survival and pleasure. The biggest survival is food. You got to eat, you know, and sex and all of the energies that come with that. And I'm not saying sex is a dirty word. I'm simply saying it's one of our greatest pleasures, and the things that go with that that have to do with feelings that cause us to be attached to the ones we have, and all of that. So don't misunderstand me now. I'm not talking about anything is wrong with that. The way Buddha Master uh, talks about it is he says, well, between I don't get into family matters. He says between a husband and wife, I only talk about what's not proper, and then I'll leave the rest to you. You decide what's proper for you. So, so it's not in a matter of like sex is bad and abstinence is good in the ways that we think of good and bad. That's just our underbelly way of looking at things, particularly if we don't have an affinity for something, or we do have an affinity for something. Um, Particularly if we have an aversion to something, you know, um, or we are our mind is constantly going towards something, and we set up this discrimination of good and bad, right? And then we use whichever side we're on to justify why our side is the right way to look at it. And so we have to go beyond these kinds of things and let this other non-differentiating cloud abide over all the things that we differentiate over, you know. And if we do, we'll come to that place that we can be sort of in a perfect kind of balance, like the seesaw when people are of equal weight, you know, and equal um, strength, like how far one can push to make the other one go down. And you ever play on the seesaw? And it was no fun at all if there was some heavy person, you know, because all you did was stayed up in the air because their weight brought it down. But you know, so whenever I wanted to do seesaw, I was looking for somebody who kind of looked my size and everything, because then it became fun. And what we really tried to do was like to get to that balance. Even as children, we understood something about this, you see, about this abiding in a certain space of balance and equanimity. So when we are shifting as we go through our meditation practices getting towards our meditation practices. There's this bridge that we have to cross that takes us from highs and lows to a kind of equanimity so that we can cross over into the meditation. So the meditation doesn't give it to us. We give, we allow meditation to arise, to emerge, to present, to reveal itself, that kind of balance that's there. And it's not disregarding good and bad, but it knows the interplay and the right balance of everything at the right time, in the right situation, for the right reasons, with the right people, all of that. So we start with some notion in language, prajna, of good and bad. And if we look within ourselves, we see good and bad, and we look at other people, we see good and bad, but there comes a place that this takes on a different kind of quality that moves beyond like a plane on a tarmac and moving in as it starts to operate the right controls, got to do the right ones, and all other things are in place. Like you got gasoline in the plane. You've done your check. You know how they go through all these check. That's what preliminary practices are. We're going through check. We're checking this meter. We're checking this. It's what they do when they fly a plane. And wouldn't you want them to do that check? Yes. And so when we're setting off to drop off our ordinariness, we're like changing lineage. We're like changing being status, is what I'm saying. From being ordinary human beings, it's great to be a human. It's the highest of the lowest orders of sentience. It's the highest of the lowest. So to even get here is something. I had a cat, and I told that cat had had a spiritual life before this life, because whenever I was meditating, the cat would come and the cat would get there. But one day I looked at him and there was a flame over his head. I said, oh my goodness, this cat, more spiritual than I am. He touched something in some life. There's something else that produced the condition for him to be a cat in this life. But from that point on, I knew he was no ordinary. He wasn't like cat to me. I had great respect for him when I saw that flame on his head. And it was it was a boon for me when he came in to meditate, instead of me, let me help with this, not so conscious animal. It was a completely different thing. But if I had not seen the flame, I'd still have thought of him as, he's a cat. I'm a human being. He doesn't get the Dharma, so it's my job to kind of like take care of him, because that's what human beings do for cats, But in that moment, because something was pulled back in my just wanting him to get the Dharma, and I saw that flame and said, like, he's supporting you in your practice. I didn't call him a bodhisattva at that time, but maybe he was, and able to reach me in a certain nonverbal way, because he just came to our door and sat at the back door and never left. As he disappeared, and so we brought him in. And so I've never been a cat person, but that one was my cat. Of course, Kay fed him and did all the things that had to be done with him. But I'm just saying that baby steps, baby steps for me around that. And so this mind consciousness thing is very important, because all the other aggregates receive directions from the aggregate of consciousness, and it's the aspect of this that we call us that understands and differentiates things, including what has form, what's devoid of form, awareness of vigil, karma, induced delusions. Okay. And so, yes, in the sense of, yeah, can cat be mother? Mhm. Yes. What consciousness can imagine includes that which has form, that which has no form. It gives rise to the mentality of differentiation, including differentiation based on avidya, differentiations based on awareness. Differentiations may be retrieved and reproduced from what one experienced a certain number of eons ago, such as some strange and peculiar incidents. And I think that I had this dream state, someplace I have actually been. It was familiar to me. And when I began to long to be in that place, it was gone. So I could access it, I happened to have accessed, yes, it. But the moment the grasping came, I dropped down, even in a dream state, into ordinary mind, and it was gone. So even phenomena that one has never seen in this lifetime might appear. These are illusions emanating from karma-induced delusion that has deeply accumulated like innumerable dust and sand. Consciousness understands and differentiates all objects that are produced by causal conditions. It differentiates. So when we speak of delusional in this sense, we're speaking of causal, cause and condition. No cause, no condition. So it's dependent on something that causes its arising. That's what delusional means in this sense, that it's not a permanent existing thing, that it arises in dependence upon something else. That's illusion. And the delusion is that because we can't see the true emptiness of everything, it becomes something for us. It differentiates. And so you can see that after a while, when one is abiding in non-differentiation, all kinds of things may arise. But because there's no attachment to it, we don't make it a thing. We don't make it a thing that we allow to guide us through the nose. Like I had this dream, and this dream said such and such, and so I've got to do such and such, or I had this vision, and Kuan Yin appeared to me and told me to do such and such. Buddha Master said, all of those are machinations of the mind. They're mind created, and so they come. So it's like it's real and it's not real. It's not real because it's not permanent, and because mind has caused or it to come into being, or allowed its manufacture for it, like a reconstitution. And so it differentiates this kind of mind, all sounds, all sights, or concrete phenomena that are produced through the coming together of causes and conditions. Consciousness differentiates all worldly phenomena that exist, and will even imagine things that do not exist. Even very strange and baffling things that appear in dreams are from one's own differentiation. And it's so important to hold that balance like that, because if we don't, we will go down a path. We'll go astray. We'll go down a wrong road. In every step of this process, it's like looking at that seesaw and getting the right balance. And in Christianity, they call it a just weight. A just weight. so that everything is balanced. This includes phenomena that appear during your Dharma practice when your mind has been emptied of all stray thoughts. I'm telling you this up front because if you do these Dharmas, they are powerful Dharmas. And if you don't have the right understanding, right, it's like the difference between driving a Yugo and a Maserati, you know, and that can hit 60 miles an hour in 5 seconds or something. I mean, this is the acceleration. And that's why it's so important to lay the right foundation and why there's so much talk about naturally, why there's so much uh, talk about the humility that allows one to have these experiences and to call the wisdom from them, you know. Um, and without that capacity, you know, you won't be able to acquire and develop the skills that lead to accomplishment. And so I constantly go back to humility. I don't care what you see, I don't care who you converse with, I don't care where you go in all of the worlds that there are to go. You are free to go anywhere you want that you can maintain the kind of humility that doesn't derail you. And the problem is that most people, when they start making advances, there's a kind of pride that creeps in, that conceit. It's very subtle. It's hard to see and it's hard to recognize. And so he almost has to pound humility in you because it's not that one means to be pride. That's just the collations and the unresolved things from the delusion that have not been uprooted yet. And I'm going to tell you that, the further you go, the deeper the stakes, and the higher the consequences or the damage. And that's why if one hasn't dealt with certain rudimentary behaviors, then they shouldn't touch this, and while one has to be totally committed to it, because it's like giving the keys to your 10-year-old and saying, here's the keys to the car, or worse, he's hanging around with some bad boys that's wanting a joyride, and you leave the cards on the table, knowing that he's going to be influenced by his friends because he can't just say no. And so, you know, in everything in life, we can see spiritual principles in it if we want to see them. If we learn how to make these associations, all life is teaching us these principles without them being glorified spiritual. We can see that they're just all right there. They're all right there. So, this includes phenomena that appear during your Dharma practice when your mind has been emptied of all stray thoughts. Those are all due to your own thinking. There's simply no corresponding external objects. What consciousness does is understand all objects that are produced by causal conditions. It has the functions of understanding and differentiating all conditioned sense objects with which one comes into contact. Now, we're talking about within the realm of the 8 consciousnesses, right? Okay. The average person does not know of the 7th or the Manas consciousness and the 8th or Alaya consciousness. When the 6 consciousnesses completely stop functioning, the 7th will appear. When the 7th consciousness appears, one is frequently in the midst of Dharma practice and will also see phenomena or illusions arise. This type of illusion comes and goes freely and vividly. These are actually not illusions. Candidly speaking, they are still phenomena, though, that you differentiate and imagine. And you see where we're getting into the crossover space now of what is fundamentally concrete and what is transformational. Says these are illusions created by your mind, and actually they are also not illusions. In our world, everything is concrete. It's this or it's that. It's up or it's down. It's in or it's out. But then we start to find these other distinctions uh, or uh, spaces that are not so distinct, and that's where we have trouble because of our delusions in everything being concrete for us in a certain way. It's this or it's this, even down to phenomena of form. Of form. It says, candidly speaking, he's speaking of what you will begin to experience in um, your Dharma practice. He says, candidly speaking, there's still phenomena that you differentiated and imagined. So the story was told, and I always share it when I'm giving the Kuan Yin Dharma, about when the master was imparting it. Some people saw a translator. Some thought it was a Caucasian translator. Some thought it was a man. Some thought it was a woman. And some thought there was no translator there. They thought that everybody was hearing it in their own language, and they couldn't figure out who was right. And they were like, no, I heard it this way. I heard it from her. No, I heard it. He was a man. No, there was nobody there. This was spoken in Chinese. And so they said, well, we have to go and ask the master. And so they went and to his room. And when they went to his room, he was standing outside the door waiting for them because he knew they were coming. And if you haven't had that Dharma, I don't want to steal the thunder of it because it has a powerful effect at the time that it's that you're receiving it, that builds faith. So I'll share it. But basically, what he was saying is that each one saw something according to their own mind. So now we've left the kumbaya stage. You know, so when we think of like a a collective consciousness or group consciousness, we haven't quite understood it in the right way. And so we bring together people with all different kinds of habits, all different kinds of behaviors, all different kinds of ways of thinking, and because we agree on Webster's definition of certain words, we think we're all in accord, but we're not. And that's the danger with the oneness movement and so forth. You know, and the Bible says, how can two walk together except they agree? You know, so there is a certain river that we flow in, even if we are of different spiritual traditions. There is still a certain river. I was going to say taste, but that's not quite it either. You ever tasted something and it tastes one way, but then after you ate 3 spoonfuls, like it didn't taste like that first little taste? Yeah. So that's what happens with these kinds of groupings. You know, he speaks uh, of trusting a person, and he said you have to observe them for a long time. He says observe for a long time. Says nonetheless, this type of imagination is special, and we're talking about what one sees when the 7th consciousness appears. One is frequently in the midst of Dharma practice. and we'll also see phenomena or illusions. Nonetheless, this type of imagination is special. It is different from the imagination of the sixth consciousness. With the imagination of the sixth consciousness, you know you are thinking. Whatever you think of is what appears in your consciousness. I think they're trying to hurt me. I think they're trying to help me. I think uh, uh, they are ugly. I think they are beautiful. I think I want this. I think don't want. I don't want this. I think whatever you think of, that becomes like a, a, a picture that takes on a quality of realness in the mind. But uh, you know that you're thinking. Whatever you think of, that's what's appearing there. With the imagination of the seventh consciousness, you are not thinking. With the imagination of the seventh consciousness, you are not thinking. It is the reverse of the sixth. And so that's where we have some difficulty between six and seven, between those two types of consciousness. That's just two of eight on our side and a ninth that proceeds from our original nature, and that has to be complete, including emptiness of self and emptiness of all dharmas. Actually, such phenomena, you are not thinking of the phenomena, yet they appear. I'm going to read it again. Nonetheless, this type of imagination is special because it is different from the imagination of the sixth consciousness. With the imagination of the sixth consciousness, you know you are thinking. Whatever you think of is what appears in that consciousness. With the imagination of the seventh consciousness, you are not thinking. It is the reverse of the sixth consciousness. You're not thinking of the phenomena, yet they appear. Actually, such phenomena do come from your thinking, but you do not know it. So he's breaking it down bit by bit so we can get it. The sixth, we know we're thinking. The seventh, we don't know we're thinking, but we are thinking. We just do not know it. Um, Young masters do not understand what is meant by illuminating one's mind and seeing one's original nature. They only know about calming themselves down and emptying themselves of thoughts or visualizing a colorful spherical object so that their bodies would then receive the chi of the earth. What is chi? All illusory manifestations are empty, including chi, which is not concrete and simply does not exist. However, because they visualize in such a manner, very slowly over a period of time, it will work for the same reason that Buddha Dharma practiced at the Xiaomin Monastery in Zhangshao worked. For the same reason, that was the one where they practiced hard and they would beat them if they lost their focus. Um, so there are methods, and I don't want all of them. There are methods. I've tried some of them, and it worked, although I didn't understand the principle, and I took it to be something real. He's just showing me another level or another layer of it. So it's not to be disparaging about anything. It's just to explain it a little deeper so that one understands more. So Um, for the same reason, teaching people to practice jhana so as to illuminate their minds and to see their original nature works. So that works, teaching people to practice jhana so as to illuminate your minds and see your original nature. And that works. That is, people are not told about emptiness, yet emptiness will manifest. Emptiness will appear. This type of illusion that appears from your seventh or manas consciousness after your mind consciousness, which is the sixth, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body all have been made still. Furthermore, this is a beginning level illusion to those who are experts in the study of Chan or Zen, as the body generating feelings of coldness, warmth, itchiness, pain, heat, or the external appearance. Um, Furthermore, this is a beginning level illusion to those who are experts in the study of Chan, as the body generating feelings of coldness or warmth, itchiness, pain, or heat, the external appearance of a three-headed and eight-armed being or other forms, the appearance of any phenomena, such as a beautiful woman or a wonderful lotus, the experience of the non-existence of the earth, and so on, they are all imagined by mind consciousness. As long as one exerts effort in one's practice, has established a certain foundation, and has a relatively good seed to start with, then such phenomena will definitely appear. For example, such phenomena appeared to the two disciples Zhang Quan because no one guided him after the appearance of such phenomena. He thought they were real. Such phenomena, I think this is a warning, right? Because no one guided him after the appearance of such phenomena, he thought they were real. And this is the problem with not understanding how phenomena arise in meditation. And when I say practicing too hard, practicing with a lot of effort, instead of doing something natural, these phenomena will occur. They'll start speaking to you, instructing you, because that's the illusion of your mind, and why it's not a good idea, you know, to run off or isolate yourself or think you've gotten a revelation or that you're a Buddha now or whatever, because these are just at the beginning stage, this phenomena appearing. Such phenomena also appeared to disciple Li Zhu. After such phenomena appeared out of ignorance, he became attached to them. Being attached, he followed and entered that state. Once he followed and entered it, he did not accept the truth that some of you told him. He insisted that what appeared to him was real, therefore, it was easy to enter into a demonic state. Um, Demonic means what takes you away from awakening. Anything when the Chinese in the Orient, when they use the term evil, that's what it means. It'll end up to your harm rather than to help and support you in your goodness, or it will harm somebody else. That was the reason. So after we understand this, we know that all forms are illusory. If one sees that all forms are not forms, if one is not attached to any phenomena that one sees, then one sees the Tathagata. Only this is our true Buddha nature. That is the seventh or manas consciousness. I've been seeing things for decades, but nobody could really explain to me in a way that I could understand why I'm seeing or what I'm seeing and what to do about it, like how to hold it, you know, because most of the people I talked to were the experts. They didn't have these experiences. But now I understand what it is. You see how you don't have to know everything. Sometimes you have the experience and you find out what it is and how to make use of it so that it becomes an ability and a power of saving yourself or living beings rather than what you actually thought it was. Um, and it's a way of bringing everything back into a view of its fundamental emptiness, which is that's the bottom line. Because in our delusion, we have the propensity to make something of things until it becomes so grandiose that we lost that we lose our way. It's just a natural, you know, occurrence unless we have principles and disciplines that help us know how to hold things. And that's why I love this teaching so much. Coming out of the Pentecostal church, when you're a child and you start having these things, they like anoint you, want to put you on TV, make you a great holy person, you know, and just not understanding even what it is except something extraordinary. And they just go with that, you know. But what I love about these teachings is that where some spiritual practices get you into a certain state, you may be in that state without understanding. And this has the way of bringing the understanding to all of us so that you can hold it properly, so it can be used and one becomes non-attached to it. So he insisted that what appeared to him was real, therefore it was easy to enter into a demonic state. So after we understand this, we know that all forms are illusory. If one sees that all forms are not forms, that their fundamental nature is also. If one is not attached to any phenomena that one sees, then one sees the Tathagata or the Dhammakaya. Only this is our true Buddha nature. And that is the seventh or conscious or manas consciousness. As for the eighth consciousness or the alaya consciousness, the situation is different. At that point, it's not merely a matter of seeing something, it is a matter of doing that's at will and with ease, being able to do whatever you please. Sometimes with one visualization thought, what was visualized will suddenly appear. When that state appears, even you disciples here present might be able to see it, which may even be an instant of someone going through a wall and so on. It could be anything. This is the type of state with the utilization retrieved from the alaya consciousness. Entering a state of supernormal powers is just a response of the eighth consciousness mind king. But when we take it and impute it onto ourselves as my power, my abilities. Reba's not here today, but last year I did a retreat. I felt terrible about doing a retreat because I felt like I should not be doing a retreat. Because if I did a retreat, I was going to do a Paniwadi retreat. And Paniwadi can do a retreat. That's okay for ordinary people, you know. But because I was endeavoring to practice deeply and enter this Dharma, I felt sort of like a charlatan giving the retreat, but they kept asking, and I was thinking, well, then maybe there's something that I could share, you know, of Buddha masters that won't be too far off the wall for them, and I agreed to do it. And so I'm there giving the retreat. And in my room, I'm just communing in the way that I commune. I'm reading and understanding in the way that I read and understand. But then when I go there, I have to talk in a different way. And then I just said, I can't do it. And so I went on and I started sharing some of Buddha, excuse me, Buddha Master's Dharma rather apologetically, you know, and because I couldn't get it across in the way that it should come across, that hopefully I will in the future. Um, and and then we went into a meditation, and they're used to doing mindfulness meditation, but I didn't. I did a Kuan Yin chanting, and then and within myself, I did Kuan Yin meditation, and I told them to do whatever felt comfortable for them. But at the end of that meditation, Kuan Yin looked down into the room. Her face filled the whole hall, which was about or 4 times or 6 times the size of this room. But it was just a face peeked in through the ceiling, and a lot of them saw it. A lot of them saw it. So I couldn't really give a teaching on it. I couldn't, it wasn't really the time. It wasn't the place. But if one enters into these states, and this is how you help other beings, you enter and you bring these forces to bear in people's lives. You enter. You don't have to bring people, drag them kicking and screaming. You can let people come, you can let people go. You can say something or you can not say something, but you yourself enter in. Naturally, it brings this to bear in people's lives. So it says, and you have to know that it's not, oh, I'm doing something like, who was that? Tom Thumb, Jack Corner, who stuck in his thumb and pulled out a plum and said, what a good Jack. Yeah, okay, that one. It's not like that at all. It's not any sense of I am doing. It's not. And if we don't eradicate those kinds of notions, then it'll be easy for us to enter into what kind of state? A demonic state. Yeah, because that's just tied in to our self-centeredness. And that's why there's so much in the beginning of this preliminary practice about not being attached to self. It's an unmeaningful arrogance. It's an unmeaningful pride of life. And we can think we're not even like that, But when you get a glimpse of the holy, you see it's just like that. It's just like that. And that's not a flagellation. Beat yourself. It's like seeing. If we talk about wanting to be awake, it's about just actually seeing it and seeing that we're not at the end of the road. This is at the causal stage. Can you imagine what's further down the road if this is at the causal stage? However, this is merely the beginning state of supernormal powers. To enter the holy state of supernormal powers, one must be completely empty and still one's alaya consciousness. Only then can one enter the holy state of supernormal powers. And this occurs naturally. Even what is from your eighth consciousness is manifested by you yourself, not to mention the fact that what emanates from your seventh consciousness is from your own thoughts. What is manifested is not external, it is from you yourself. Therefore, among demons, the most frightful are the demons of the 5 aggregates. We know what the 5 aggregates are, right? Anybody not know? Okay. They are your own demons that appear. It is you thinking of yourself, you controlling, or even you beating down yourself. Here I will give an example that's very real. Disciples in Dai County know that in Dai County, there's a painter by the name of Lei Jimin called Teacher Lei. He studied and practiced under Dharma Master Chang Wang. One day, when he was doing his Dharma practice, a supernormal state appeared. So, first of all, you don't make it arise, but it appears according to where your consciousness is. The states are indications, of where your consciousness is, but it's your mind. He saw a person with a large, darkish painted face, like that of a powerful or malicious male character in traditional Chinese opera, holding a steel whip. That being approached teacher Lei and said, "You have already attained accomplishment, Lei. If you learn Buddha Dharma under me right now, you will immediately attain liberation. Also, starting from tomorrow, you will be able to perform tricks with this whip. Riding on this magical whip, you will be able to travel around various countries." He believed those words. Since he believed what was said by that being, whatever that being told him to strike, he struck accordingly. On the bang, bang, bang sounds of striking resulted, his wife, Mrs. Lay, heard that and she rushed in. What she saw was horrible. He was lying on the floor with blood everywhere. He had taken a knife and cut his own head 73 times. He was taken to Sichuan Hospital for treatment. That is how he went insane. Since he had gone insane, it was not easy to cure him. Afterwards, he remained a bit insane. What is the meaning of this? After he entered the seventh consciousness or mana consciousness, he became attached to the phenomena that he produced through his own imagination. That is what's called the demon of the five aggregates. Near the end of the Surangama Sutra, the following sentence appears very often. If you become attached to holy states, then you will subject yourself to numerous evil influences. If you become attached to holy states, then you will subject yourself to numerous evil influences. Now, some people say, why are we talking about that? Or well, I didn't know about that. But the fact is that there are ones who are entering these states in this sangha. And so there needs to be a teaching on it. That is, when one enters a certain type of demonic state, one will pick up a knife to even kill oneself. That is such a section in the sutra which confirms the state of mind he entered. Thus, all phenomena emerge from what one thinks in his own mind. How could there be phenomena that comes from the outside? There are none. Thus, the key point in learning from Buddha is to realize liberation. What about supernormal powers or shape shifting, etc.? It's true that there are these supernormal powers. These powers are what Buddhas and Bodhisattvas must achieve. Moreover, they are proof of the state of realization of Buddha Bodhisattvahood and the state of realization of an eminent monastic or greatly virtuous one. Nevertheless, such powers are also illusions. Their utilizations are also achieved through imagination by the mind consciousness. They may not be used as one wishes before one has attained the supernormal power of defilement extinction. And I think, no, let me read on. Those who have supernormal powers may not make use of those states. So it's not trying to do something, trying to conjure up something, trying to make something that not wanting or desiring them for oneself to be something. He says that we should not even speak of it. One who has attained powers and talks of those powers will lose them. And that's the reason why he gives examples of powers and he tells stories about disciples, but he tells it for instructional purposes, as a warning, as a caveat, as to know how to use it, how to hold it, and it's really important that we get it. And it's one reason why he's talking about the five aggregates. That's our personhood, right? And so if we are not really, if we like our personhood, one should not undertake certain practices. Don't ask for them, because if one gives that practice, then it's not only the person who asked for it, the person who gave it also bears the karma of the misuse of it, and the harm to the person that they gave it to. They gave it to. So I'm going out to California this next in 2 weeks, to take up to do a retreat and take up another practice that I will be able to come back, um, and give for conducting retreat. And I'm so excited about it um, because I know it will help me to be clearer at what places remain in me, and how to uproot them, so that one can be of more use to oneself, yes, but can be of more use to others. I mean, if one is endeavoring to be of more use to others, I'm included in the others. Self and others are equal. That's why I don't have to think about myself. I only have to think about others, and I'm automatically included, but not in a selfing kind of way, you know, or not in any kind of thinking way like I am, I, the five aggregates, is getting anything, you know. And so this is a serious matter when we start looking at higher practices. Otherwise, just stick with you know, mindfulness of the breath. Stick with things like that, because and take your yawns to awaken, if you want to. But I just want to let you know that it's real, and it's something to be highly respected, and that we have to have uh, the um, be endeavoring to maintain the standards of virtue to enter them. We all touch those standards. We just don't stay in them, you know. We all touch them, so we shouldn't think badly of ourselves, but we should endeavor and have a mind that they're not something that harms us, something not good for us. Even when we have our don't want to mind, there's some things like I don't want to, like I like the mentalist. I don't want to give it up. But when when something happened in my meditation, I look in that, it's cutting off my time. You know, my thoughts don't go to the mentalist. I just love the way, this is all contrived story, you know, but I just love the way his mind works. And my mind's not sharp like that. So I've watched, I think maybe 60 times now, 155 episodes. And when they have the cutouts, like he comes in and looks at a crime scene, and he figures it out like that. His eyes go and he sees this. I don't know what it just diverted to. His eyes look over there, he sees this, and he looks at it and he says, "I'm done." You know, and I'm like, what did he see? And I'm rolling it back to see if I can see what he saw, because I want to get that kind of discriminating mind. I want that, you know, and then, and so the whole show plays out. And at the end, they say, well, how did you know? Oh, I knew from the first time I walked in, because when I looked there, I saw that. When I looked there, I saw that. You know, and I was like, oh, just to have that kind of sharp mind is, you know, I think that's why I watch it. I don't know really, but anyway, as I've started, something came clear to me in my practice of how to correct something I was doing in my Yidam practice. My Yidam helped me. And once he helped me, he put a song. It put a song in my heart, So now when I'm thinking about, oh, I'll turn on and relax with some mentalist and sharpen my mind, I hear it calling me, to do my practice. That practice that I didn't like even a month ago because I was still going through the motions, reading the words. It wasn't a part of it, just wasn't a part of me, you know. But staying with it, all of a sudden something clicked and something else took over. And what it was I just read something that really helped me understand the power of mantra practice. And that was my very first introduction to Buddhism, was mantrayana. And I said, gotta be more than chanting to this. I said, I was filled with the Holy Ghost and I didn't have to learn no chant. I could just open my mouth and start speaking, so I don't know about that. I don't know if that's real or not, and and I poo-pooed it. And that hindrance of knowledge kept me from entering this 28 years ago, because I thought I knew the way that the holy beings and the celestial beings communicate, communicate with you. And I mean, that could be a way. Actually, it was a way because I really did, but it wasn't the only way. And um, and so I lost half of my life just due to the hindrance of knowledge, something I had already known and experienced in one particular way. Um, so all phenomena emerges from what one thinks in one's own mind. How could there be phenomena that come from the outside? There are none. So I had this great aspiration, this great wish to enter. And so I couldn't enter, trying to force myself into it because, like, I get it, I understand, but couldn't force myself into it. But at some point, the mind began to turn, just ever so gradually. And then when it turns to the place that it clicks, it's like opening you used to have those lockers at school, and combination lock, right? It, there were the cheap ones too. You listen real closely, you could hear the click. And you can get in anybody's locker. They might as well not have combinations because you go in anybody's locker, but it gets like that. The refinement, the non-ear hearing allows you to, you hear that click and you stop right there. And then you turn the other way, you hear that click. And then you enter in. So I use these kinds of analogies to help me, number one, to recognize how ordinary the extraordinary is. I can look all through life, all little things like the lock, combination lock, or whatever examples I use, and you can use them too. Think of them from your own life, and you see that this is not a strange Dharma. This is not a strange teaching. It's not something so far out. You can make analogies right in your own life every day where you live and see that it's no more than that. And when we think of these mantras, this is all I'm going to say about that because I'm going to end now. Later out, maybe next week maybe Sunday. Yeah, maybe Sunday because we have some special songs for Sunday. Maybe Sunday I'll talk about mantra in a little bit more detail. But I want to say that if you could imagine mantra being like a car, and although I am operating the car, I'm not really the vehicle that's transporting, am I? No, I am driving the car. I'm giving it its direction. He said where it's coming from. It's coming from right our own mind. So I'm giving it some direction. But the power of transport resides in the vehicle, is what I'm saying. Not in the driver, other than you can take the long route or the short route. But the power is in the vehicle. And we think of a car, and a car has a lot of power. Car is just this inanimate object that has so much power. You know, but if I was 6 years old and I got behind the wheel, I might still be steering that car. You know, I can steer that car, but it's the car itself that still has the power. So I can either know what I'm doing with it or not know what I'm doing with it. But the vehicle does not diminish in its power. If I don't know how to put it into drive, I'm thinking about the. Sorry, my age. We used to have the thing on the arm, you know, the arm on the column. If I'm thinking, yeah, yeah. You know, if I don't know how to put it into drive, it doesn't mean that the vehicle is faulty. I just don't know how to operate, you know. And when it takes me from here to there, it wasn't my own, I didn't beat feet. It was the power of the vehicle. So if you could just kind of hold that in mind, then although we are doing something, we're reciting the mantras, we are visualizing, yeah. But it's the actually the vehicle is making the transport. So I think I'll stop right there. Any questions about today?
Does the eighth consciousness correspond with bodhicitta, which is the eighth fundamental right view of cultivation?
Well, they all correspond, but you have to be careful. I'm speaking to you now specifically about the way that the mind vectors and ties things together. So when we're talking about bodhicitta versus the eighth consciousness, they're two different things. The bodhicitta is not the eighth consciousness.
Okay. Thank you.
So just don't mix them. Leave bodhicitta in its lane and the steps leading up to it. And right now you want to stay focused on understanding where these thoughts come from, where these visions come from, where these illusions, how they arise and how they appear. And that is an understanding all in itself. But if you start mixing it into, you know, the notion of bodhicitta, then you'll get confused.
If it's appropriate to ask, I wanted to, from what Jen described, that technique or that practice, and actually the question is directed to you, Venerable. Can that be considered, can that technique be considered exchange between self and others? You know, so the person was performing a process, and never actually.
So Jim did the practice, so I guess Jim could answer that question. But I've always thought of it. I've thought of it that way, in part, exchange between self and others, and I've thought of it in other ways because of other practices that I've had, you know, as well, which would be like the Buddha Master talks about right now. One sees things in accordance with phenomena, but in the future, phenomena will change in accordance with one's mind. You know, so that's where I hold it now. If you want to add to that, then please go ahead.
My understanding is that the Ho'oponopono process takes place at a level where there really is no distinction between self and others.
So most of my mantra, seems like most of my mantra experience has to do with Didi practice, Yidam practice. And it's as if the mantra is sort of the opportunity to get hooked in with the deity. So I'm just,
So what's your question?
that's just been my experience. And as I shared that experience, I'm wondering, is that the typical
Okay. Great, I
purpose of
understand the
mantra?
question. I understand the question. So you could say that's an aspect or that's a view
Okay.
of it. That's not an incorrect view. It's not the only view.
Yeah.
It is a view.
Mhm.
And if one has a bent or an inclination towards devotion, that's one that they can understand and work from. For one who doesn't have that, there is another view,
Mhm.
you know, and so one can enter the gate from whatever
Mhm.
view helps them get in.
Mhm.
You know, so yes. And then sometimes people think they don't have that, you know, and when they start with it, it emerges, you know, and they never thought they were that way, you know, or they never thought they could see or understand things from this perspective because everything broadens. You know, we start beginning to get a glimpse of our boundlessness and uh, our capacities that and faculties that have not been activated or used or were shut down because of some thoughts in the mind that blocked them or whatever. You know, so there's no two people actually land in the same spot in the Dharma, but find your spot though. You know, that's the important thing. Yeah. Somebody offer.
We dedicate the merit from our time together today in this precious study to all beings who are suffering in the 6 realms of samsara. May they find their way to peace and wisdom. May they find their way to true liberation from the 6 realms.
So as we're starting to tighten and refine now, and the main admonition is don't get distracted. Don't get distracted. Like, we're moving towards method, moving towards technique, moving towards how to look and hold something. You can't be going in 2 or 3 directions in the mind, going all, you know, it's like pay attention, stay focused.